In the name of one God, creator, redeemer, and sustainer of our lives. Amen. This summary of the law, I'm grateful that this interchange happened and that Jesus was able to summarize the law. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. That seems to me a very helpful distillation at one level, because then it's like, oh, it's clear. This is really about love. And then, but as I sit with it, as I think about it, as I've been talking about it with people this week, it's like, oh, well, okay. This is one of those things where, you think you know what it means, but what does that really mean? Like, what does it mean to love God with your whole heart? What does it mean to love God with your whole soul and with all your mind? And what does it mean to love your neighbor? In my experience, it's actually taking a lifetime to kind of work that out and figure that out and learn how to do that. And so what seems simple and clear actually is profound and deeply meaningful in a way that engages a whole life, right? Engages all your mind. I mean, that can engage your life, that can engage your mind, and can engage your heart. I've been reflecting one way of entering that journey is to read the book of Leviticus, which is what our lectionary invites us to do today. And because the lectionary, Leviticus is the law. When Jesus says, what is the greatest commandment? I mean, he's referring to Leviticus. He's referring to Numbers and Deuteronomy and Leviticus. And Leviticus says, be holy, for I am holy. You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. Which deepens the conundrum. Like, what is holiness? What does it mean to be holy? And how is that related to love? Because I think they are related. Jesus is saying, well, actually, if you want to talk about holiness, you need to talk about love. And if you want to talk about love, you need to talk about holiness. And so that's where I begin to my curiosity has been kind of engaged, because holy is one of those words. It's like there's a sense that somehow holiness indicates, my image for holiness is like the Holy of Holies, where humans couldn't even tread and where the priests were afraid to go into ultimately. And they tied an ankle, the high priest entered the Holy of Holies once a year. And at that point, they tied a rope around his ankle as he went in, just in case God struck him dead, they could pull the body out. There's a real sense that you cannot be in the presence of the holiness of God and live. And so what does it mean for God to say, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord, am your God, am holy? Then it goes on to say, well, honor your father and your mother. Keep my Sabbaths. Remember the Sabbath day. Don't turn to idols. Don't make cast images for yourself, for I, the Lord, am your God. And there's a sense in which holiness is about being set apart. It's about, the sense of not making other images and not profaning the name of God. There's a sense that actually revering it and honoring that actually God is separate from our expectation. God is separate from the gods that we would create on our own. God is separate from, the kinds of projections that we would have onto the divine, that actually God is different than that. And so maybe part of God's holiness is maintaining the otherness of God, in terms of God is beyond our expectations. But what does it then mean for God to say, well, you are holy. You can be holy like I am holy. You too can be other in a good way. Like you too can be other in this life-giving way. So part of Leviticus 19, excuse me, spells that out. It talks about honoring your father and your mother. It says, don't lie to one another. Don't steal. Don't bear falsely with each other. I mean, what's curious to me is one of these passages that we didn't read. It says, when you reap a harvest of your land, you shall not reap to the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. You shall not strip your vineyard bare or gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. It's basically saying when you produce something, leave something. Like when you grow something, leave something. You shall leave it for the poor and the alien, for I am the Lord your God. It's part of what I'm hearing. It's part of holiness is caring for the other. I mean, later in the chapter, it says, embrace the aliens in your midst, right? Embrace the strangers. Embrace the immigrants in your midst. For I am holy. It says you shall not defraud your neighbor. You shall not render an unjust judgment or be partial to the poor. You shall not go around slandering is part of holiness, which this week has really struck me as, part of it, what it means not to slander, it means to tell the truth. It's that 9th commandment of thou shalt not bear false witness against your neighbor. And what that means is you need to tell the truth about your neighbor. It means you need to be honest about who they are. It means you need to not engage in character assassination. And so that's got me thinking about the unholiness of social media. I mean, how often that happens in social media where like something gets posted or something gets praised that talks about the other. It demonizes the other, demonizes that political party or demonizes that particular group or that, and without being honest about who those people actually are, without being honest about what they really believe. That's actually slander. When you're not telling the truth about somebody, you are slandering them. So it's curious that matters to God. And I can see why. I mean, given the nature of the polarization that is kind of developing in at least in the United States, and you can see it in other parts of Europe, and so far we don't feel it that deeply here in Canada. But that polarization is related to the inability for people. I mean, people are not telling the truth about the other. They're actually slandering who the opponents are. They're not being truthful about what the Democrats believe or what the Republicans believe. You should not hate in your heart anyone of your kin. You shall reprove your neighbor, or you will incur guilt on yourself. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against your people. But you shall love your neighbor as yourself, for I am the Lord. So here, that's where Leviticus takes it really directly and clearly. You shall love. All this somehow is related to love, and we're in the midst of trying to figure out how that is, what it means to love. Part of what I wanted to do for this sermon was to show a video, so we posted it on the Facebook page, and I'm going to invite you to watch it. A clergy friend of mine introduced me to it, and he didn't like it. He thought it was theologically muddled, and he may be right about that. But it's a video by Justin Bieber. It's kind of the top of the charts right now. I don't know anything about Justin Bieber. I'm not a fan of. I don't know enough about Justin to either be a fan or dislike him. I know he's Canadian. That's about all I know. But anyway, the song is called "Holy." And what I love it is okay. Here's a man who's wrestling with holiness. And the particular clip where it tells a story. It tells a story about a series of relationships and the holiness of those relationships. The relationship between a caregiver and who's working in a care home for seniors. The relationship between that caregiver and the people she cares for. The relationship between a man and a woman, and the holiness that can be found in those deep relationships. It's about the holiness of honest labor and good work, and what happens when one loses that. It's about the holiness of a father and a daughter, and the holiness about what happens when someone reaches out to strangers and offers them hospitality. So I commend it to you. What I like about it is just it's a way of wrestling with what does it mean to be holy in this world? And it's happening right now on the top of Billboard 100, so it's worth being engaged in. But because I think it might help inspire us just to think about, what does that mean in our own lives? What does it mean to be holy? A holy people of God. Amen.